and their ability to use lobbyists as a means of changing policy. But it's not just using lobbyists that's an issue as well. All right. What else you can do is campaign contributions. And we said, look, campaign contributions were such an issue, such a problem, that they made the Federal Election Campaign Act in order to try to stifle that a little bit, because they said, look, man, you got to disclose where you're getting the money from and how you're spending it. There's limits on what a person or a group can donate to a campaign. It established the FEC, which is the government group, the government agency responsible for monitoring all that. And I think I even mentioned too the other day, a couple politicians have gotten in trouble for misusing campaign funds. So it's very possible, very feasible that you can go to jail for that. And one more thing about this Federal Election Campaign Act that was significant is that it banned labor unions and corporations from using their money on political activity or donating it to a campaign, because they said, look, you've got some businesses, some corporations who have so much money that it wouldn't be fair. An example I've been using, do you know that Apple right now, after they've done all their research and development, after they paid their shareholders a good bit of money, after they have given bonuses to their employees and paid exorbitant salaries, they still have $100 million in the bank. Okay? They're just sitting on $100 million. All right? And right in the middle of recording something, I've got to answer the phone because why not? Hello? We'll come down there towards the end. That's all right. Library. We'll go back there later. All right. Now, the problem with the money here, okay, is that even when you change the rules, right, people don't like it because politicians, a lot of politicians have been used to the old way where they weren't held accountable with campaign finance. Okay. So some of these politicians just didn't want to go along with this. One of them was a guy named James Buckley from New York. Okay. And Buckley was a senator who said, look, this law, the Federal Election Campaign Act, he filed a lawsuit saying it was unconstitutional. He said this law should be kicked out because it violates the Constitution. Ooh. Right? And here was his argument. It was a pretty clever argument, too. Right? He said, hey, this violates the First Amendment freedom of speech. And of course, like, what do you mean First Amendment freedom of speech? Let's hear this argument. And he said, hey, this law, this Federal Election Campaign Act, by putting limits on how much you can give to a candidate, you're putting limits on speech. And he said, look, when you give money to a candidate or a campaign, like if I give money to the Kate White for Congress campaign fund, when I give money to her, I'm essentially saying what?
You support her.
I support her. The act of giving money to a candidate is the same as free speech. It would be no different if I was out holding a sign saying, vote for Kate White. Right? When I give her money, that's the same thing. And if you make laws limiting the amount of money, you're limiting my speech. And therefore, this law should be thrown out. Ooh, that's a clever argument, don't you think? All right. Now, the court has to address the key question here. Is the act of giving money to a political candidate, is that considered free speech? All right? And here's what the court decides in this case, in Buckley versus Vallejo. There's three things that I'll put up here for you that they decide, okay? The first one, they're like, you know what, you're right. Giving money to a candidate is the same as political free speech, okay? It is the same as political free speech. So you're right. When you do give money to a candidate or their campaign, you're saying, I support this candidate. And at this point, Buckley was thinking, oh, yeah, we're in good shape. Okay? But there's a but. And there's always a but. And in this case, it's a big but. Pun intended. Right? The Supreme Court said, look, yes, it is free speech, an act of free speech, to say that, to give money to a candidate campaign. But it's okay for the government to limit how much you can donate to a candidate because maintaining a fair election process is more important than your First Amendment rights. Right? And they said, look, it wouldn't be fair if Smith over here is a multi-billionaire And then you got Quinlan, who's just a regular working Joe like the rest of us, and he doesn't have a lot of spare cash. Okay? Because are there people with enough money to drop millions in elections and never miss it?
Yes.
Yes, there are. A good example this year, Michael Bloomberg, who owns news outlets all over the world, his net worth is about $50 billion. He spent, on his own run at president, which didn't last long, he spent $50 million on that. And not to mention, he after he dropped out of the race, he donated money to Team Biden and Democrats in large quantities. It's easy to say that he probably spent $80 to $90 million this year on political campaigns and activities. And I mean, that's a lot of money, and he won't even miss it.
Who's the big Republican donor? Like the really big shark?
It's over the Koch brothers.
Not them, but he's really old. Yeah, I think he has a media company and
Murdoch, Rupert Murdoch. Yeah, he used to own Fox News. Okay. Now, ultimately, there are these people who have so much money that they would, like, literally losing $90 million is nothing. That's like me giving you $5 out of my pocket. Like, I'm not going to miss it. Right? That's a significant thing. And the Supreme Court said people like that, with that kind of money, would have too much influence if we didn't allow, like, if there were no limits, then ultimately people like that would have an exorbitant amount of influence over policy and politics. Sir?
With like Citizens United.
We're not there yet. Don't get to that case. Don't get too far ahead of us, okay? Because there's a long way to go to get there, all right? Now, we'll talk about that case, the Citizens United case, later on, okay? Now, here's the thing. The third thing in here, the government can't limit how much money a candidate spends on their own campaign, okay? So no matter how much money you have in your campaign, whether it's your personal money or whether it's been donated to you, they can't put a cap on that. So, for example, this year, Joe Biden, in individual person contributions, got over $900 million. And he was allowed to spend every penny of it. Right? That's a lot of cash. Okay? Now, you can spend as much money as you want. Plenty of people have spent their own money, and you're free to do that. There's no cap at what they can put on you in terms of your spending. Right? And this is the decision they came up with Buckley versus Valeo. So some people are disappointed because they're like, oh man, that individual limit and the limit on groups, that stands, okay? Now, even when there are rules in place and the rules are legitimate, like limits on what a person can donate, right, or what a group can donate to a campaign, people always look for loopholes. They look for ways around it, all right? And there are two key loopholes we want to mention. The first is the development of something called political action committees, or PACs. Political action committees. Right? PACs are groups, these are nonprofit groups that are legally entitled to raise and spend money on political campaigns. These are nonprofit groups that are legal. These are groups that are legally entitled to raise and spend money on candidates and candidate campaigns. Right? That's what a PAC is, a political action committee. Right? And these didn't invent these were just invented. They didn't exist until the 1970s. Okay? And here's how it worked. All right? And bear with me here. If you're home, imagine drawing on the board a big old square to represent Apple. Okay? So here's Apple. Apple's just sitting on $100 million, and they would be like, hey, sure would be nice if we could spend that money on political activity, but we're banned from doing so. Like, how could we get money into the political system and still support the candidates we like and try to influence policy? And so here's what they came up with, okay? I'm the CEO of Apple, and I can't use that $100 million, but here's what I can do. I can set up a nonprofit political group, a PAC, which we're going to call Apple PAC. What a clever name, right? Right? So that's just a pretend we're calling it Apple PAC, right? And I hired Kate White to be in charge of Apple PAC. And I'm like, Kate, what I want you to do is I want you to find, recruit, and support candidates and political activity who are friendly to Apple. And Kate's like, great, how much do I get paid for this? And I'm like, that depends on you, right? you any money to start Apple Pack because it's corporate money. But how does any group get money in the first place? Donations. So I'm like, Kate White, you know what? It would really be in your best interest to start getting donations, because the better you perform at your job, the more we're going to make sure that you get paid. Okay? And so Kate starts asking for donations. Right? And if you were Kate, what types of people would you go to that definitely want to see Apple get to change policy? Rich people. Yeah. Not a bad guess, but not every rich person is going to support it. You go to the employees of your company to start with. Like, let's say that Sydney works for Apple as a software engineer. And does Sydney want to see Apple succeed? The answer is yes. And so she says, hey, I personally am more than happy to donate $5,000 to Apple Pack. Nobody's making her do it. She does it because it's smart. She's getting well paid, and she says, look, if Apple helps get people elected who are friendly to it, then the company prospers. And if the company prospers, I prosper too. This is an investment. Fun fact too, anytime you donate to a political campaign or to a PAC, it's tax deductible. Meaning that you don't get all that money back, but you will pay less in taxes for it. So ultimately, Sid says this is a win-win scenario. Right? It's tax deductible, and it's going to help out the company, and the company will be able to help me out in the future. And usually, if you're giving money in political activities, like I could give money to political groups if I wanted to, right? But at the same time, it's like I need to buy things for me. But if you're super wealthy and you're making a lot of money, this is really a smart move for you. Okay? And this is how unions and corporations, that's how they essentially operate and get around the rules, okay? And PACs, and what's going to happen is when Kate has organized an Apple Pack, like let's say in her first year, she gets donations that total $100,000. She's going to donate that money to candidates running for office. Like Apple Pack will give you money, right? And so let's say Ben over there is running for office, and we know he's going to be friendly to the computer world, to the tech world, right? Kate's going to be like, we're going to donate $5,000 to your campaign. And Ben's like, that's great. You've got a friend. And so we'll expect when Apple Pack calls him up, he's going to take our phone calls. All right, question?
Aren't they legally barred from working directly with campaigns?
No, PACs can still work directly with campaigns. All right, you're thinking of super PACs. We'll get to those later. And like, so for example, when Kate says, hey, Apple, our political action committee would love to help you out in any way, shape, or form. And, here's this money, but we think you should do X, Y, and Z with it. She can talk to him, the candidate. That's perfectly acceptable. All right? That happens quite frequently. Okay? So those are PACs, political action committees. Now, how much money do you think they insert into the system each year?
Billions.
Oh, they didn't put a lot of money into it. So check this out. If we go to this wonderful nerdy website, OpenSecrets.org, you can find lots of good information. And one of the things you want to find here, you go to Influence and Lobbying, and then you click on PACs. It shows you specifically how much money gets spent every year. All right? And you see that, look, PACs give to both Democrats and Republicans, because do they care about your political belief or your party? When Kate White and Apple Pack give you money, what do they care about? Are you going to vote on the policies the way we want you to? All right? I don't care if you're the most liberal or the most conservative. All right? Now, every year, like in 2020, PACs gave about 200, and they're not finished tabulating this from 2020, by the way. That's why this number, it's going to trend up. It'll probably be over $320 million to each party. Okay? Just in PAC donations. That doesn't include what individual people give. All right? Now, you look at the top ones this year. The National Association of Realtors, the beer wholesalers. Ooh, they're a good example. Okay? And it shows you what the beer wholesalers have done every election cycle from 1990 all the way to 2020. And look, they've given away, they give to both Democrats and Republicans. And you can see what they've raised and spent in the last 2 years, their breakdown of who they give it to, where they're registered at, a whole host of material, including candidate recipients. You can look up any particular candidate to see if they've done this. I'll bet Carol Miller got money. Oh, look at that. Carol Miller from West Virginia got $7,500 from the beer wholesalers. Right? By the way, is getting support from the beer wholesalers, that's not really a bad thing. Like, nobody's going to get upset. What is it? We'll get to them in a minute too. Hang on, I'll give you some other examples. Capito. Nope, she didn't take money from the wholesalers. Manchin has, but not on this election cycle. He wasn't up for that. What is it? This only does federal, not state. Okay, but we can look at, let's see here, Alex Mooney, from West Virginia, took $3,500 from the beer wholesalers. Right? You can look at that information. You can also look at, these are the people that give money to the beer wholesalers PAC. Now, notice that individual donors gave over 1,300 large contributions, meaning $200 or more. And it tells you, like, I don't know who Michael Schley or Schliselli or whoever is, but he gave $5,000 to the beer wholesalers. And notice, he works for the Supreme Beverage Company. What type of beverages do you think they distribute? Alcoholic beverages, beer. And if you look at everybody who's given money to the beer wholesalers, they're all people involved in the alcohol business. And why are they doing that? It's good for them. They realize it's important to have their interest represented. Okay? So they're spending money, they're giving money to the beer wholesalers, and the beer wholesalers turn right around and ship it out. Now, their expenditures, they tell you specifically, most of their money is going to contributions to candidates. In fact, if you're giving money to the beer wholesalers, they're giving it right back out to political candidates. And you can look up any group. What is it? Yeah, that's because if you're working in the alcohol industry, you're probably doing all right. Let's see what they got for AFT here. Ooh, American Federation of Teachers. Let's see what we're up to. We're probably spending more than we should. Oh, boy. They spent money on lobbying. They've spent money on contributions. Quite a bit. Quite a bit. Right? And you can see the recipients, the lobbying that they're all involved with. Right? And once again, you can see this for pretty much every group. Oh, we're going to get to that soon. All right? And you look at all these and notice, too, that some of these groups are groups that you want to think are ordinary and that they're not real big on things like, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, like they're spending millions. Yep.
Why do they have company names on there? I thought they weren't allowed to.
You can still call it what you want. American Crystal Sugar. Fun fact, we talk about interest groups and their policies. Big sugar companies actually work really hard to try to not get you to see the negative effects of sugar. For a long time, what did people think caused folks to become overweight? The amount of fat in products. And so you'd see things advertised as low fat. But come to find out later on, what is it that really causes that? It's sugar. And the sugar companies don't want you to know that. And they don't want restrictions on their products. So they pay big money. I guess you could say it's a sweet deal. Do not mock me over there, Smith. All right. You can see the Carpenters and Joiners Union, the AFT this year, the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers, Honeywell International. They make a lot of electronic products. But all these people, all these groups, and you can search any group, and they are spending a crap ton of money on PACs. All right. Let me go back to AFT for a minute. Oh, there's lots of little local solidarities here, too. Man, there's a lot of companies here. I mean, my gosh, they're everywhere. Stop talking to me, Siri. Oh, I said stop talking to me. All right. Now, the PACs, they have lots of money, but something else you can do, too. If you click on Donor Lookup, you can look up what individuals are giving as well. And you can look in your particular zip code. Like, what's a zip code? 25504. Type that in there at the wrong place. There it is. 25504. And we're just going to look in all election cycles. You're going to see that there are people like Sean Hammers, Corky Hammers, who's the Cabell County prosecutor, gave money in 2008 to Shelley Moore Capito.
This feels illegal, but it's
I know. This is like Facebook stalking, only better. All right. Let's look at 2020, and we'll do my zip code 25701 Huntington.
Should we look you up and see if you can
I can promise you there'll be $0 on there. All right. You can see these people, retired folks, the amount of money they're giving to, the recipient, the date, all of it's in there. And there's some people who give quite a bit of money quite frequently. And it tells you that they're giving money to the parties, or if they're giving to candidates. People are giving $1,000 here and there to Carol Miller. So, this money's out there. And the best part, too, if you want to look up famous people, Oprah. I don't know if Oprah did anything in 2020, but she has in the past. Oh, Oprah, you disappoint me. Watch this, though. All cycles. Oh, look at that. Oprah's given money left and right back in the day. All right? And so you can look this information up about anybody. You can look up your family. I know. Watch this. Here, West Virginia. Bam. Oh, my brother's he gave $1,000 to Joe Biden this summer, and then forked over another $250 in September. Gave money to the American College of Cardiology, a PAC, and back in the day gave money to Joe Manchin. I don't know who this lady is, Melina Scalise, but she's given money to candidates as well. So it's all out there. All the information's out there, and you could spend a lot of time looking this up. And so that information is out there for you to see, right? Because once again, they have to disclose it, and so you have to make it public about what people are doing and what they're putting out there. Now, there's some other things we want to know too. We want to mention one more specific type of donation. Okay. Now, any money that you're given through campaigns, okay. Any money that you're given, like for example, let's say that Taylor's running for office. Okay. This is his campaign fund. You had two basic ways that you could donate to his campaign. You could have money coming from PACs, and you can have it coming from individuals. Right? And these contributions, this is the stuff that's monitored specifically by the government. You have to report that money. Okay? And we call that hard money. Those are hard money contributions, stuff that you can follow and track. The donors that we were looking up, the PACs, the individuals, that's hard money. Right? But remember, people are always looking for loopholes. Okay? So imagine you got somebody like over here, like Bailey, and she's got plenty of money, and she's like, hey, these limits are ridiculous. I want to donate to Ben's campaign fund, but I'm limited about how much I can give him. She could give to PACs and that are friendly to him, and that's great too. But see, here's the thing. Rich people in the late 70s found another loophole, something called soft money. They refer to as soft money. All right? And in soft money, you don't give directly to a campaign or candidate. Here's what you do. The law would allow you, okay, to give money to political parties. Right? And Ben, if you were running, would you run as a Democrat or Republican? What is it?
Republican.
Okay, so we're going to put you as a Republican candidate. So the GOP, they're over here, okay? And what you could do, the law back then allowed you to make unlimited contributions to a political party. So Bailey's going to make an unlimited contribution. In this case, she wants to give $1 million to the Republican Party, right? But it's unlimited. You could give as much as you wanted, as long as the party used them for, quote, party building activities. You could give as much money as you wanted to the political party, as long as the party used that money for party building activities. All right? What's a party building activity?
Winning elections.
I mean, it could be anything, right? What if Bailey said, hey, I want the Republican Party to throw the biggest fundraiser that anybody's ever seen, and we can have it for all Republicans, but Ben Taylor better be like the guest of honor, okay? And she also says, hey, some of that money, that $1 million that I'm giving the party, there should be a good chunk of it that goes directly towards things like T-shirts and campaign buttons that say "Vote Red" and then they got Ben's face on it. All right. You could do that, and that way super rich people like Bailey could have a strong influence. All right? Now, the party couldn't give that money directly to his campaign, but they could spend it on all that stuff. And you could do a number of things. Like, let's say what we wanted to do was we wanted to run a bunch of advertisements, all right, that say, vote for Ben, and Ben is the man, okay? We could do that. And Ben's like, he doesn't even have to worry about it. The party's doing it for him. Right? That's what we call a soft money contribution. And the best part about soft money, parties didn't have to account for where they got the money from. They didn't have to report it to the government. Those are soft money contributions. Okay? Now,
a really big loophole.
it is a big loophole, and people were angry because they said, what's the point in putting limits on individuals and PACs if you're just allowed to make these unlimited soft money contributions? Okay? And politicians didn't want to restrict soft money because they benefited from it. Right? Like once Ben gets elected, do you think he wants to vote for a bill that would get rid of soft money? No, because he benefited from it in his campaign race. What do you think happens to the amount of spending that goes on in political campaigns?
Skyrockets.
It goes through the roof. Okay? Soft money contributions are up, individual contributions are up, and so are PACs. People feel like you have to spend as much money as the other guy or you don't win. Right? And there's some element of truth to that. Okay? And we'll pick up with that tomorrow, guys.